I arrived in Chicago for another business trip, fully planning to hide behind my laptop at the Crown Hotel. But one look from the concierge, Jake, and my walls began to crack. His calm confidence made me wonder if I was finally ready to open myself to a world I had ignored for far too long. The cab rolled to a stop outside the Crown Hotel, its sleek glass facade reflecting the restless pulse of the Chicago skyline. I stepped out, the late March air biting at my cheeks as I adjusted the strap of my laptop bag. Another work trip. Another city? Just a 2-day blur of meetings and deadlines. That's what I told myself as I dragged my suitcase through the revolving doors. Expecting nothing more than a quiet stay and reliable Wi-Fi, I'd done this routine 100 times before check-in. Settle into the room and bury myself in emails until it was time to fly back to San Francisco. But as I crossed the polished marble lobby, someone shifted the script entirely. Behind the concierge desk stood a man who didn't blend into the background of crisp uniforms and rehearsed smiles. He was tall, maybe mid-30s, with dark hair swept back in a way that looked effortless yet intentional. A few strands of silver caught the light, hinting at a life lived beyond the polished surface of the hotel. His eyes, sharp green, observant, locked onto mine as I approached. For a split second, I forgot why I was even there. My pulse jumped, sudden and unfamiliar, and I blamed it on the long flight or the coffee I'd downed at the airport. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. "Welcome to the Crown Hotel," he said. His voice was low and steady, carrying a warmth that felt personal, not practiced. His name tag glinted under the soft lobby lights, Jake Rivera. I cleared my throat, forcing myself to focus as I placed my ID on the counter. "Checking in. James Collins," I said, aiming for casual and landing somewhere closer to awkward. His lips twitched, just a hint of a smile as he typed into the system. His fingers moved with the same quiet confidence that seemed to define him. "Here for business, I take it?" he asked, glancing up those eyes again. I nodded, shifting my weight. "Yeah, just a couple of days. Mostly meetings." He slid a key card across the desk, his gaze lingering a second longer than necessary. "Room 1410. Top floor. Great view of the city." His tone was smooth, almost teasing. As I reached for the card, my fingers brushed his hand by accident. The contact was brief, but electric. I pulled back too quickly. "Thanks," I muttered, gripping the key card like it was a lifeline. Jake's smile widened just enough to notice. "Enjoy your stay, James. I'm around if you need anything." The way he said my name soft, deliberate, stuck with me as I turned toward the elevators, my heart pounding in a way I couldn't explain. The lobby faded as I stepped into the elevator, the doors sliding shut with a quiet hum. I leaned against the wall, running a hand through my hair, trying to shake off the moment. It was ridiculous. He was just a concierge doing his job. I was just another guest passing through. But as the numbers climbed toward the 14th floor, my mind replayed those green eyes, that voice, the way he'd looked at me like I wasn't just another reservation. I'd spent years building walls, keeping people at arm's length after too many sideways glances from friends who didn't understand or didn't want to. Being myself wasn't something I advertised anymore. So why did this stranger in the span of 5 minutes make me feel seen in a way I hadn't in years? The elevator chimed, and I stepped into the dim hallway, soft lights casting long shadows along the carpet. Room 1410 sat at the end. When I swiped the key card, the door clicked open to reveal a sleek, modern space. Floor-2 ceiling windows framed the glittering sprawl of Chicago below, just as Jake had promised. I dropped my bag by the bed and crossed to the glass, staring out at the city lights. It was beautiful, but my thoughts weren't on the view. They were on him. On the way he'd said, "I'm around," like an invitation I wasn't sure I could ignore. I exhaled, fogging the window, and muttered, "Get it together." James, this was supposed to be just another trip, but standing there alone with the hum of the city beneath me, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had already shifted. I wasn't ready to walk away from it yet. The city lights flickered outside, the massive windows of room 1410. a restless dance of yellow and white against the dark Chicago sky. I stood there longer than I meant to, hands in my pockets, staring at a view that should have calmed me. Instead, my mind buzzed with Static Jake's voice looping, those green eyes cutting through the haze of my routine. Finally, I turned away from the glass and grabbed my laptop. Determined to drown the noise and work, a presentation for tomorrow's meeting still needed a few tweaks. And I'd always been good at losing myself in deadlines. But as I sank onto the edge of the bed, the laptop screen glowing softly in the dim room, my focus slipped away. It wasn't just Jake, it was what he'd stirred up memories. I'd shoved into a corner years ago, back in San Francisco. I'd tried being honest once. A casual night out with friends, a few too many beers, and I let it slip. Nothing dramatic, just a mention of a guy I'd liked. The table went quiet, then shifted. A couple of them laughed it off, but the rest followed with sideways glances, clipped replies, plans that slowly stopped, including me. I learned fast. Keep it locked down. Stay safe. Work became my shield. Marketing campaigns didn't care who I was, as long as I delivered results. So why was this stranger, this concierge, cracking through that armor with nothing more than a smile and a key card? I rubbed my eyes, the laptop screen blurring as I tried to type. The words wouldn't come. Instead, I saw Jake's face, calm, steady, like he knew something I didn't. It was absurd to feel this rattled over a 5-minute exchange. I stood and began pacing the room, soft carpet muffling my steps. Maybe it was jet lag. Maybe it was the solitude of a new city. Or maybe I was just tired of pretending I didn't notice the empty spaces in my life. I stopped by the window again, pressing my forehead against the cool glass, and let out a slow breath. "You're overthinking this, James," I muttered, my voice barely audible over the faint hum of the room. A soft knock shattered the silence sharp. Unexpected, I froze, my pulse jumping as I glanced at the clock. 9:47 p.m. Who would be at my door this late? Room service? I hadn't ordered anything. I crossed to the door, hesitating with my hand on the knob before finally pulling it open. There he was. Jake Rivera stood in the hallway. His concierge jacket swapped for a dark sweater that made him look less formal, more real. His hair was slightly tousled, like he'd run a hand through it one too many times. And those green eyes met mine with the same quiet intensity as before. "Just checking in," said, his voice smooth but carrying a trace of something else, curiosity. Maybe. Wanted to make sure everything's okay up here. He leaned one shoulder against the doorframe, casual but deliberate, and I caught the faintest hint of his cologne, saw something clean and woad. My throat tightened. "Everything's fine," I managed, gripping the door a little harder than necessary. "The room's great. The view's great, thanks." I sounded stiffer than I meant to, and he raised an eyebrow just enough to notice. "Long day?" he asked, his gaze steady, not looking away. I nodded, rubbing the back of my neck. "Yeah, you could say that. Travel, work, the usual stuff." He tilted his head slightly, like he was weighing my words. "Doesn't sound like the usual stuff is what's really on your mind." His tone wasn't pushy, but it struck a nerve, and I felt my defenses wobble. I could have brushed him off, closed the door, gone back to my laptop, back into my safe little bubble. But something about the way he stood there, relaxed and unguarded, made me pause. I stepped back just enough to signal that he could come in if he wanted. "You don't have to do this, you know," I said, my voice quieter now. "Checking on guests after hours." Jake stepped inside, the door clicking shut behind him, and suddenly the room felt smaller with him in it. "I don't," he admitted, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Not usually. But you didn't strike me as the type who'd ask for help if you needed it." He glanced around the room, then back at me. "Am I wrong?" I swallowed, caught off guard by how easily he saw through me. "Maybe not," I said, crossing my arms not defensively, just to steady myself. "But I'm fine, really." He didn't push. Just nodded and moved toward the window, hands tucked into his pockets. "This view is something else, isn't it?" he said, looking out at the city. "Always reminds me there's more out there than what we let ourselves see." His words hung in the air, simple but heavy, and I felt a pull in my chest, something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a long time. I joined him by the glass, the lights below blurring as my thoughts spun. This wasn't just about a view. This was about me and him, a choice I wasn't sure I was ready to make. The city lights shimmered beyond the window of room 1410, a quiet glow filling the space where words hadn't yet settled. Jake stood beside me, his reflection faint in the glass, hands still in his pockets. The air between us felt charged not with anything loud or obvious, but with a stillness that made my skin hum. I'd let him in, against every instinct I'd honed over years of keeping people at a distance. And now here we were, two strangers staring out at Chicago like it held answers I didn't know how to ask for. "You're right," I said finally, my voice cutting through the quiet. "It's more than just a view." I didn't look at him, keeping my eyes on the skyline, but I felt his attention shift toward me. He didn't say anything, just waited. That silence tugged at something deep inside me, a thread I'd kept buried since San Francisco. I exhaled, slow and shaky, then turned to face him. "I'm not great at this," I admitted, gesturing vaguely between us. "Talking. Letting people in. Whatever this is." Jake's expression softened, his green eyes steady, but never pressing. "You don't have to be," he said, his tone low and even. "Not with me." He stepped away from the window and leaned against the desk a few feet away, giving me space without breaking the thread between us. "I've been where you are. Took me a while to realize it's okay to stop running from yourself." His words landed like stones in still water, rippling through me. My chest tightened, not with fear, but with recognition. I sank onto the edge of the bed, elbows on my knees, staring at the carpet like it might help me untangle the mess in my head. "I tried that once," I said quietly. "Being myself. It didn't go over well." I swallowed. "Friends I thought I knew, they just faded out. Made it clear I didn't fit the picture they had of me." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "After that, I stopped trying. Work's easier. It doesn't ask questions." I risked a glance at him, expecting pity or some rehearsed response. But Jake just watched me. His face stayed calm, unguarded. "That's their loss," he said simply. The way he meant it, no judgment, no fuss, got me off guard. He straightened, crossing his arms loosely. "I spent years doing the same thing, hiding, keeping it all locked up. I grew up in a small town where different wasn't a word people liked." He paused, then added, "It took a long time to realize I wasn't the one who needed to change." A small wry smile tugged at his lips. "I learned the hard way that living for other people's comfort gets old fast." I nodded, the weight of his words sinking in. "How'd you get past it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jake tilted his head, thinking it over. "Started small," he said. "Told one person I trusted, then another. Built a life where I didn't have to pretend." He gestured vaguely around us. "This job, it's just what I do, not who I am." Took me a while to see the difference. His eyes met mine again, steady and warm. "You don't have to figure it all out tonight, James, but you don't have to keep it all in either." The room felt quieter after that, like the air had settled around us. I leaned back on my hands, staring at the ceiling, letting his words roll through my mind. He was right. I didn't have to have everything together. But sitting there with him just a few feet away, I felt something shift. Not a grand epiphany, just a crack in the walls I'd built. Letting a thin sliver of light through. "You make it sound easy," I said, a faint smile tugging at my lips. Jake chuckled, soft and low. "It's not, but it's worth it." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The city hummed outside, a distant soundtrack to whatever this was becoming. Then, low, almost without thinking, I stood and crossed to the desk where he leaned. I didn't touch him, I didn't need to, but standing close enough to feel the warmth of his presence, I felt steadier than I had in years. "Thanks," I said, meeting his gaze. "For checking in. For this." Jake's smile widened just a little, and he nodded. "Anytime. I mean that." He pushed off the desk, glancing toward the door. "I should let you get some rest," he said, but there was a question in his tone, like he was leaving the choice up to me. I could have let him go. Retreated back to my laptop and my safe little world. Instead, I shook my head. "Stay a minute," I said, surprising myself. "If you've got nowhere else to be," his eyes lit up, a flicker of something bright and unguarded, and he settled back against the desk. "Nowhere I'd rather be," he replied. The simplicity of it, the honesty, made my heart stutter in a way I wasn't ready to name. As we stood there, the city sprawling out below us, I realized this wasn't just about a stranger in a hotel. This was about me finally letting someone see the parts I'd hidden for too long. Morning light filtered through the curtains of room 1410, soft and gray, a quiet contrast to the restless energy I'd carried all night. Jake had stayed longer than a minute closer to an hour before, slipping out with a quiet, "See you tomorrow," that lingered in the air, long after the door clicked shut. I'd lain awake after that, staring at the ceiling, his words tumbling through my mind like stones smoothing themselves in a river. He made it sound possible living without the weight of other people's expectations. But now, as I sat up, the hotel room quiet, except for the distant hum of the city waking up. Doubt crept back in. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, rubbing my face with both hands. Today was packed. Meetings from 9 to 5. A presentation I still needed to rehearse. Work had always been my anchor, something solid to cling to when everything else felt unsteady. But this morning, it wasn't enough. My laptop sat on the desk, untouched since Jake's visit, and instead of opening it, I found myself replaying our conversation. His story's small-town shadows, finding his way out, stuck with me. I'd never had a place like that. Not really. San Francisco was supposed to be different, open, free. And yet, I'd built my own cage there, brick by brick, after those friends walked away. I stood and crossed to the window. Chicago stretched out below, a sprawl of steel and glass under a cloudy sky. I thought about the last time I'd let someone in, a coworker, years ago, who'd casually asked about my weekend plans. I'd mentioned a date just as casually and watched his smile tighten. His replies turned clipped. It wasn't hate, just discomfort, but it stung all the same. After that, I stopped sharing. Kept things vague. Kept myself safe. But Jake, he hadn't flinched. He'd listened. Really listened. And for the first time in a long while, hadn't felt the need to edit myself. That thought followed me through the day. Quiet hum beneath the buzz of meetings and polite small talk with clients. I smiled, nodded, pitched ideas, but my mind kept drifting back to him. Those green eyes, that steady voice. By the time I returned to the Crown Hotel, the sky had darkened, a light rain streaking the lobby windows. I was halfway to the elevators when I spotted him behind the desk. Speaking with a guest, that same calm confidence in his posture, he glanced up, caught my eye, and flashed a small, knowing smile. My stomach flipped. I waved awkwardly before ducking into the elevator, my heart thudding like I'd just run a mile. Back in my room, I dropped my bag and loosened my tie, pacing the floor. I could leave it there, a nice moment, a fleeting connection. I'd fly out tomorrow. Back to my routine, and Jake would become just a story I told myself late at night. But the idea of walking away, of letting this fade into nothing, knotted something tight in my chest. I stopped by the desk, staring at the phone for a long moment. Then I grabbed my jacket instead. 5 minutes later, I was downstairs in the hotel cafe, a small, cozy spot with warm lights and the rich scent of coffee lingering in the air. Jake was there off shift now, sitting at a corner table with a mug in front of him. He looked up as I approached, surprise flickering across his face before settling into a grin. "Couldn't stay away, huh?" he teased, nodding toward the seat across from him. I slid into it, feeling the tension ease from my shoulders. "Something like that," I said, managing a smile. "Figured I owed you a coffee after last night." He leaned back, eyes bright. "Careful, James. I might get used to this." We talked easily at first about the city, the rain, the strange quirks of hotel life. But then, like the night before, the conversation shifted. Do you ever think about what you'd do differently? He asked, absently stirring his coffee. If you could go back? I paused, the question catching me off guard. Yeah, I said finally. I'd stop hiding. I'd tell people who I am and let the chips fall where they may. I'm tired of pretending it doesn't matter. My voice sounded steadier than I expected. Jake's gaze softened, something like quiet pride shining in it. Sounds like you're already starting, he said. Warmth spread through me, not just from the coffee, but from the way he saw me. What about you? I asked, leaning forward. Any regrets? He thought for a moment, then shrugged. Not anymore. Took me a while, but I like who I am now. Took meeting people like you to remind me why it's worth it. His words hung between who's simple, honest, and for a moment I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. I just sat there. The rain tapping softly against the window, feeling like maybe, just maybe, I was ready to take that step toward myself, with him right there beside me. By the time Jake and I left the hotel cafe, the rain had softened to a drizzle. The warm glow of the lights faded behind us as we stepped back into the lobby. My coffee cup sat empty on the table we'd shared, but I felt fuller than I had in months, maybe years. Our conversation lingered in my mind, his words about liking who he was, now echoing alongside my own quiet resolve to stop hiding. It wasn't a grand declaration, just to shift a crack in the walls I'd built, letting something new seep in. And Jake'd been there, steady and real, making it feel less like a leap and more like a step I could actually take. We paused near the elevators, the low hum of the hotel wrapping around us. You've got an early flight tomorrow, right? He asked, hands in his pockets, green eyes catching the light. I nodded, shifting my jacket over my arm. Yeah, back to San Francisco by noon. The words felt heavier than they should have, like I was already leaving something behind. Jake tilted his head, a small smile playing at his lips. Guess this is where I say safe travels, then. But he didn't move, and neither did I dot the air between. Us held a question neither of us had voiced yet, and my chest tightened under its weight. I don't want this to just be a coffee and a goodbye, I said. Surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded, his smile widened soft. Unguarded, and he stepped closer, just enough to close the gap without crowding me. Good, he replied, his tone low but firm. Because I don't either. He pulled out his phone and handed it to me with a raised eyebrow. Put your number in. I get up to San Francisco sometimes. Family stuff. Maybe we'll cross paths again. I took it, my fingers brushing his for a split second, and typed in my number, feeling a flicker of something bright and unfamiliar. Hope I handed the phone back. He tapped out a quick text, and my phone buzzed in my pocket. When I pulled it out, there was a simple message waiting for me. Jake Rivera, don't lose this. I laughed, soft and easy, and looked up at him. Not planning to, I said, and the way his eyes lit up made my heart stutter. Your trouble? I teased. You know that? He shrugged, grinning. Only the good kind. You'll survive. There was a brief silence. Then, more quietly, he added, take care of yourself, James, and don't stop what you started here. His words landed deep, a gentle push I hadn't known I needed. The elevator chimed behind me, breaking the moment. I glanced over my shoulder. Guess that's my cue, I said, stepping back. Jake nodded, his smile softening. Yeah, but it's not goodbye. Just see you later. I held his gaze for a second longer, then turned and stepped inside as the doors slid shut between us. As the elevator climbed, I leaned against the wall, my phone still warm in my hand, and let out a slow breath. He was right. It wasn't goodbye. It was something else. Something I wasn't ready to let slip away, back in my room. I packed slowly, folding shirts, tucking away notes from the day's meetings. The city stretched out beyond the window, quieter now. Rain reduced to a faint patter against the glass. I thought about San Francisco, my apartment, my routines, the life I'd built to keep everything simple. But simple didn't feel right anymore. Jake had seen Marilee, seen me, and I couldn't unsee that. I couldn't go back to pretending that the parts of myself I'd buried didn't matter. Not after this. The next morning, I checked out early. The lobby buzzing with the soft chaos of travelers coming and going. Jake wasn't at the desk, probably off shift, and I felt a brief pang of disappointment, but it didn't linger. His number was in my phone. Quiet promise I was holding on to. The cab ride to the airport was quick, the city blurring past in streaks of gray and gold. I settled into the back seat, watching Chicago fade, and pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over his name. Then I typed, "Made it to the airport." "Let me know when you're in SF." I hit send before I could overthink it. The reply came almost instantly. "Count on it. Safe flight, James." I smiled and tucked the phone away as the cab pulled up to the terminal. The skyline shrank behind me as I stepped out, suitcase in hand. The March air cooled against my skin. I didn't have all the answers, not about what came next, or how I'd navigate the parts of myself I'd kept hidden. But for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel alone in it. Jake wasn't just a chance meeting in a hotel. He was a spark, a quiet push toward something real. As I walked through the airport, the hum of voices and rolling luggage fading into the background, I felt lighter. Like I was carrying less weight and more possibility. This wasn't the end of a trip. It was the beginning of something new, and I couldn't wait to see where it led.